Hey there, welcome back at Learn Dutch with Yas. I'm Yasmin and today I'm going to be teaching you the conjugation and the grammar of the present perfect. So today we are going to go over a small part of how I would be explaining this grammar in my Dutch courses with you. We're going to go over how to use this tense, when to use this tense, and how to conjugate it, and we will be going over some exercises too. So I want to remind you that this is a part of how I would be explaining it in my video course and in my group classes. So if you are struggling at this moment to learn Dutch by yourself, you're not satisfied with how you're learning it or the progress that you're making, then I would recommend you to have a look at our current Dutch classes, because I'm sure that you are going to love the way that we explain it to you. I've linked below everything that you need to know more about our video course, our group classes, our private classes, and even our vocabulary books. So take a look and then we are going to be diving into this exercise. Let's talk about the Voltooid Tegenwoordige Tijd. Let's talk about the present tense. What is the present tense? The present tense is being used when the past does affect the present. So when, for example, we were talking about the other past tense, the past simple in my other video, I've linked it below again if you haven't watched it yet. We were talking about facts about the past, or when you are describing a context or a situation, a setting. Here in this tense, we are actually going to be explaining a context. So for example, if you would be saying, ik heb last van mijn rug. I have a pain in the back because when I was working in a bakery. Ik heb vroeger nog in een bakkerij gewerkt. Or, ik wil vandaag geen pasta eten because yesterday I ate pasta already. Ik heb gisteren al pasta gegeten. Or, for example, ik ben moe. Ik heb vorige week 10 kilometer gelopen. So we are talking now about reasons why, for example, you are tired today or you don't want to eat pasta today, because the past does have influence on the present. So for example, ik heb 10 jaar in een bakkerij gewerkt. These are 4 examples in different languages for you to understand. So how do we conjugate this tense in the past, so in Dutch? We are going to be using a helping verb. So for example, in English, in French, in Spanish, in other languages, in German, we have it too. We are using hebben or zijn, to be or to have, in Dutch as a helping verb. And then we are going to create a voltooid deelwoord. A voltooid deelwoord is a name for how we are going to be conjugating the verb that is defining the action. So for example, in English, if you say, I have worked, the worked is het voltooid deelwoord in English. So what are we going to be doing with that voltooid deelwoord? We are going to take the stem. We're going to be adding the GE to it and then a T or a D. Let me show you, for example, how we do it with werken. We have our verb werken. What are we going to be doing? We are going to be taking the stem of our verb werken. If you don't know how to take the stem of a verb yet, you should be watching my video about the present tense first, because it shouldn't be that you go over the past tenses before you've mastered the present tense. As you can see, we are adding a GE before the werken, before the stem, before werk, and then we are adding a T. Why do we add a T? Because we are using the rule of soft ketchup again. So if you haven't watched my other video about past tense, it's actually better to first watch the video about the other past tense before going to this video, because there I extensively explain what the rule of soft ketchup has to do with if we have to use a D or a T. But I will also explain it to you here. What is it? If you take the root, the stem of your verb, so for example here werken, or for example here geloven, we are going to have a look at the last letter of our stem, which with werken will be the K, K. And with geloven, it will be the wie. What are we going to do? We're going to have a look at this word and we're going to see is the letter in the word or not. In soft ketchup, we do have the K, but we don't have the V. So what are we going to say? Here we are going to be adding a T because the K is in our soft ketchup, and here we are going to be adding a D. Makes it a bit more easier for you to know if it's a D or a T. And then we conjugate it very easily. We conjugate hebben or zijn in the present tense. Heb, hebt, heeft, hebben, hebben, hebben. And then we are going to be adding the voltooid deelwoord. And that's the basic rule of how to conjugate the regular verbs in the present perfect. So let's practice. For example, with koken. What do we do again? First, we decide, do we use hebben or zijn? With this one, it will be hebben. The difference between when to use hebben or zijn, I will explain later. So we are going to be using hebben. We're going to be conjugating hebben in the present tense. That's the easy part. And then we need to create our voltooid deelwoord. From koken, we are going to take away the in. Kook. What is the last letter? The K. So we're going to be adding a T to our voltooid deelwoord. And so we get, ik heb gekookt, jij, u hebt gekookt, hij, zij heeft gekookt, wij hebben gekookt, jullie hebben gekookt, zij, ze hebben gekookt. And this is how we conjugate verbs in the past. So try it now for yourself with werken. I'm going to give you 15 seconds and then I'm going to be showing you the solution. So, the solution is, ik heb gewerkt, jij, u hebt gewerkt, hij, zij heeft gewerkt, wij hebben gewerkt, jullie hebben gewerkt, zij, ze hebben gewerkt. Now try it with leren. You're gonna get 15 seconds and then I'm gonna give you the solution. So the solution is, ik heb geleerd with a D, because the R from leer, the stam leer, is not in soft ketchup, so it's going to be conjugated with a D. Ik heb geleerd, jij, u hebt geleerd, hij, zij heeft geleerd, wij hebben geleerd, jullie hebben geleerd, zij, ze hebben geleerd. So, what is something really important to know when you're using this tense? It is that you have to know that the sentence structure is a bit weird. Why? Because our second verb is always going to be put at the end of our sentence. Ik heb vorige week 10 kilometer gelopen. Whereas for example, in English, you would say, I have run 10 kilometers last week. In Dutch, we are going to be putting that second verb at the end of your sentence. This is something really important to know and something that you have to keep into account. This is something really difficult, so don't worry if in the beginning you are struggling with it. We practice this a lot in our Dutch courses, so this is something that a lot of students struggle with, and the students that struggle less with it are those that follow Dutch courses. So, then we also have strong verbs. As I told you before, we can go over them in another video. In my normal Dutch courses, we have a look at them already, but what I do want to tell you is that there aren't any rules. You just have to learn it by habit. So there are a lot of strong verbs in this past tense where it voltooid deelwoord, so the active verb, the verb that is talking about the action, is conjugated in a different way than what we just saw. But that is something that we talk a lot more about in our Dutch courses. And then the only thing that I really want you to be aware of is when do you use zijn. As I say on the right corner bottom, in my course, what I tell you is that you have to be aware of this, because in a lot of courses, in a lot of situations, they're going to tell you, learn this by heart. But by learning this by heart, it's not going to be helping you. So what we do in our courses is repetition, repetition, repetition. For the sake of this video, I want you to learn it and to know it, but if you really want to be able to master this, joining our Dutch courses is the best way to go. So when do we use zijn? There are a couple of verbs with which we always use zijn. These are some of those verbs, such as beginnen, blijven, komen, gaan, gebeuren, vergeten, worden, zijn, and lukken. So as you can see, with a couple of words, we always use zijn. For example, ik ben gekomen, but. Then we also have verbs with which we sometimes use hebben and which we sometimes use zijn. For example, when you have a verb where you change from position or being. So for example, if you're standing upright and you're falling down, you're going to use zijn. Ik ben gevallen. Hij is gevallen. Wij zijn vertrokken. Jullie zijn geschrokken. Yes, here you go from being normal to being afraid. So you change from being you're like how you were before to how you are now is changing. So we use zijn. You also use zijn when you are moving. So for example, if you move from being at home to walking to the forest, you're going to be using zijn. Hij is naar het bos gewandeld. He walked to the forest. But if he's walking within the forest, he's staying within one place, we are using hebben. Hij heeft in het bos gewandeld. Ik ben naar de stad gelopen. Ik heb in de stad gelopen. You are so, for example, using zijn when you are moving. Ik ben vertrokken. Ik ben aangekomen. Hij is meegereden. Wij zijn weggereden. Ik ben gekomen. Ik ben hem gevolgd. Sometimes we also use hebben or zijn interchangeable. So, for example, in the Netherlands, they might be using hebben, where in Belgium we would be using zijn. For example, in the Netherlands and in Belgium, we would say, ik heb de wedstrijd verloren. But in Belgium, for example, we would be using, ik ben mijn portemonnee verloren in Dutch. So here we would be using zijn with the verb verloren, whereas before we were using the verb hebben with verloren. How to learn this? This is just being learned by repetition and knowing what the people around you are saying. Or for example, ik heb mijn paraplu vergeten can also be used with ik ben mijn paraplu vergeten. Or you can say ik ben je niet vergeten or ik heb je niet vergeten. So as you can see, with a couple of verbs, we are just using them interchangeably and it depends from region to region. So as I said before we started with when to use hebben or when to use zijn, I told you this is just for you to know. Some of the rules are easy, as in, for example, you move from one place to another. Obviously, it's zijn. When you change from being happy to being mad, it's zijn because it's like something you go through. But some of the verbs are when you have to use zijn instead of hebben is just learned by repetition. Something that we do a lot and that we teach a lot within our courses. So that's what I wanted to talk about today with you. I would love for you to join our Dutch courses so you can learn things like this more easily and learn from us. So if you liked this video and my explanation of the tenses in Dutch, I would love for you to go to my website and have a look at how we teach Dutch and how you can join our Dutch classes. And then I would love to see you again in one of my new videos too.